Welcome back, everyone, and today we've got a full breakdown and reaction from the Cowboys' preseason matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, a game that gave us plenty to dissect when it comes to individual performances. Preseason may not always be about the final score, but it is absolutely about finding out which players are trending upward, which players are struggling, and who is truly fighting for their place on the 53-man roster. Against Baltimore, we got a clearer picture of both the bright spots and the concerning areas for the Cowboys, and names like Joe Milton, Andrew Booth, Damone Clark, and James Houston are already creating some buzz. So let's dive into the full list of winners and losers from this contest, and really break down what it means moving forward for the Cowboys as they continue to fine-tune before the regular season. One of the big stories of this game was Joe Milton, the rookie quarterback who many Cowboys fans have been curious about. With his incredible physical tools, strong arm, and athleticism, Milton has been a prospect that scouts called a boom or bust type player. In this game, we saw both glimpses of that potential and the raw edges that still need refining. Milton had moments where he absolutely zipped the ball into tight windows and showed off why people rave about his arm talent, but there were also sequences where his decision-making lagged behind. He missed a couple of reads, held the ball too long in spots, and showed that he's still adapting to the speed of NFL defenses. Even with those hiccups, Milton ends up being more of a winner from this game because he showed tangible growth and gave fans a real sense of what his ceiling could look like if he continues to develop under Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff. On the defensive side, Andrew Booth really stood out as someone who has been working to establish himself in this Cowboys secondary. With Trayvon Diggs and Darren Bland already locked into starting roles, depth and rotational talent are crucial, and Booth needed to put good tape out there to secure his spot. Against Baltimore, he looked sharp in coverage, displaying physicality at the line and fluid movement downfield. He contested passes, stayed sticky in coverage, and had a few highlight moments where he broke up key throws. Booth was tested against Baltimore's young receivers and, more often than not, rose to the occasion. For a player whose career has been defined so far by inconsistency and injuries, this performance was a breath of fresh air and definitely puts him in the winner category from this game. Then there's Damone Clark, a linebacker the Cowboys have been leaning on as a potential breakout player this season. Clark had a very active game against the Ravens, flying around the field, making tackles in space, and showing instincts that you love to see from a young linebacker. He diagnosed plays quickly, was aggressive at the line of scrimmage, and displayed range sideline to sideline. What made his performance stand out wasn't just the tackles themselves but the way he took command of the defense during his reps. In a unit that has been dealing with injuries and depth questions, Clark's continued growth could be one of the more important storylines as the Cowboys push into the regular season. He looked confident, comfortable, and ready to step up as a key contributor, making him another clear winner from this matchup. James Houston, however, lands more in the loser category from this game. While Houston has flashed potential as a pass rusher in practices and during earlier moments in camp, his performance against Baltimore left a lot to be desired. He struggled to generate consistent pressure, often getting neutralized at the line of scrimmage and failing to make much of an impact when the Ravens' backups were on the field. For a player fighting for a depth role in a talented defensive front, these kinds of games matter a lot, and unfortunately, Houston didn't show enough to move his stock upward. If he doesn't turn things around quickly, he may find himself on the outside looking in when final roster cuts come around. Beyond those headline names, there were other players worth mentioning when it comes to winners and losers. On offense, the Cowboys' running backs had mixed results. While the blocking wasn't always clean, some backs showed burst and vision, while others struggled to create anything after contact. These battles for RB2 and RB3 are critical with Tony Pollard gone and the Cowboys needing to solidify their ground game identity. Wide receivers also had their share of highs and lows, with certain young players stepping up and others fading into the background. Preseason is all about these small margins, and every snap counts. The offensive line was another area that left Cowboys fans with mixed feelings. At times, the protection held up well, giving Milton and the other quarterbacks time to work through their progressions. At other times, the line got pushed around, which disrupted drives and killed momentum. For Dallas, which has had injury concerns and depth issues in the trenches in recent years, getting these young linemen to take a step forward is critical. The staff will surely be diving into the film to sort out which players are trending upward and which may not be ready for meaningful snaps. Defensively, aside from Clark's standout performance, there were positives in the secondary beyond Booth. Young corners and safeties are continuing to make their presence felt, and while not perfect, there's definitely a sense that Dallas has a pipeline of talent developing. That said, some defensive linemen struggled to hold the point of attack, especially against Baltimore's physical run game. That will surely be a focus in the film room because if the Cowboys can't stop the run consistently, it could spell problems once the regular season begins. Coaching also deserves a mention. Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn had a plan to rotate players and give plenty of guys chances to show what they could do, and for the most part, it worked. The Cowboys got to evaluate players across different situations, and while the results weren't always clean, these reps are invaluable. The preseason isn't about looking perfect, it's about finding answers, and this game definitely provided some clarity on who's ready and who still needs time. The Ravens, as always, were a tough test. They have one of the deepest rosters in football, and even their backups push you physically and mentally. For the Cowboys to come out of this matchup with some standout performances is encouraging, but it also highlights areas where Dallas still needs work. That's the value of these preseason contests. You learn more about your team in these moments than you sometimes do in blowout wins. In terms of roster implications, Milton's performance should secure him continued opportunities to develop, and Booth's strong showing helps his case for solidifying a roster spot. Clark looks poised to step into a more significant role, which is huge for this defense, while Houston's struggles mean his future with the team is murkier. Preseason is always about stock rising and falling, and we saw plenty of that against Baltimore. At the end of the day, Cowboys fans should come away from this game feeling cautiously optimistic. There were young players who showed growth, veterans who held steady, and some areas of concern that will need to be addressed. That's exactly what you want at this stage of the preseason. The next step is building on these performances, correcting mistakes, and sharpening up before the games start counting. So that's the full breakdown of winners and losers from the Cowboys vs. Ravens preseason matchup. Joe Milton showed flashes of why he was such a fascinating draft pick. Andrew Booth reminded everyone of his potential when healthy. Damone Clark looked like a future defensive cornerstone, and James Houston unfortunately didn't deliver what was expected. That's the nature of football at this time of year. Every rep matters, every performance is scrutinized, and the roster picture gets clearer with every game.